Hi everybody, Kent Toussaint from Teen Therapy Center here in Woodland Hills, coming to you live on Facebook for our weekly Tips on Teens question, where you email us questions and we answer them every Wednesday. Here's our question for this week, and it's a big one. My 13-year-old son has a lot of trouble keeping friends. His teacher suggested that he might be on the autism spectrum. What does that mean? How do I find out if he is? So, again, another huge topic. We're going to try to touch on this as best we can in the limited amount of time we have. So there's three things about this. What is autism spectrum? How do you find out if your kid qualifies for that diagnosis? And what do you do about it? So number one, what is autism? We're going to be talking about, in very broad terms, the high-functioning autism. So something used to be considered Asperger's disorder, which is now under the umbrella of autism. There's two big key factors to this. The first one is a persistent deficit in social communication issues, has a hard time reading a room, has a hard time understanding another person's emotional point of view, can get very stuck on power and who has status and who doesn't have status, becomes very rigid. Another part is restricted interests and behavior patterns. For example, again, this is just broad generalization here. Let's, for example, say your kid has three interests: baseball, Legos, and cooking. And if you're talking about anything beyond those topics, he has a hard time being interested. He has a hard time motivating himself to talk about those things, perhaps. He has a hard time taking interest in another person's journey or perspective. It could be that, he has a hard time also changing patterns of behavior. And this is where screens can really be a problem. Because if your kid's really into video games and you want him to transition a pattern of behavior or a routine away from playing video games and going to soccer or going to piano class or going to some extracurricular activity, he or she may have a really difficult time transitioning out of that. Also, the restricted interests. And also another thing that you could see is a real sensitivity to sensory input. For example, your child may be really sensitive to certain sounds or certain smells or touches. So what I see a lot is, parents may be really interested in consoling their child when they're upset and giving them a hug and just sharing love with their child. But if your child has a really difficult time with physical touch because it's really unbearable and intolerable, it's difficult for that parent to console the way they feel is natural, the way their gut tells them to do it. And it can create a real feeling of helplessness for a parent. So what do we do with all this? How do we tell if your kid really qualifies? Because you may be hearing these symptoms and they go, well, it sounds kind of like my kid, but I'm not really sure. The best way to find out is to get your child tested by a licensed psychologist who focus on kids and teens. We have a psychologist on staff here at Teen Therapy Center, but there are plenty of psychologists throughout the Valley and LA that can do this testing. You can even possibly get the testing done through your school district if you can get them to do that. So if you get a diagnosis of autism from a licensed psychologist, you could now qualify for LA County Regional Center. And what is that? That's a part of LA County that provides services to a lot of people with deficiencies or disorders, and one of them is autism, and it's free services. So you could qualify for social skills training or occupational training, whatever those deficits that your child has determined that they need. Also, in the bottom of this below, I've listed different autism websites and Facebook links, the link to Regional Center in our area, but also one of the big things is kids with autism often need emotional support and help. So do the families. And I've had some families say, well, I don't want my kid to know he's autistic. He'll just use that as an excuse to not, try. And that's not usually what I see. I've seen some kids who refuse to accept that diagnosis on the surface. But I think deep down inside, they get it. Other kids, and most kids I find, are relieved to know, oh, I'm not so different after all. And there is hope. I can thrive. I can learn to adapt with these struggles I have, and become a thriving member of society, because it is possible. It's totally possible. So I encourage you to get help, get educated. Again, look at the links I have listed below. Contact us for more help. Get a therapist who focuses on kids and who focuses on kids working with autism. The whole family needs help. So I really encourage you to look into that. If you have more questions about this, which I'm sure you do, go to the links below, give me a call, email us here. If you have a question you'd like us to answer here every Wednesday at 12 for Tips on Teens, email us at tipsonteens@teentherapycenter.com, or just message us here on Facebook. And if you have more questions or more information about us, go to our website, teentherapycenter.com. Thanks for tuning in, and I'd love to hear all your questions and comments. Bye-bye.